Andrew Armstrong, welcome to the back office. Today I'm going to take this TV game system and this pad and merge them into one to make the ultimate PC arcade stick. This is one of those cheap TV games you can buy. It's got 4 independent buttons and it actually has, if you can hear it, a real genuine clicky micro switch joystick. So this is going to be a perfect accessory for my PC. Let's start building. First things first, let's just gather our parts. Here's the controller, here is the new thing we're going to use, and here is the actual donor I'm going to use for some parts. And the reason I'm going to use a donor is because I want to reuse these switches. They're very expensive and I haven't bothered finishing this prototype. So frankly, I think it's a great opportunity for us to reuse these bits. Now these are really heavy duty switches. They're really quite over the top for something like this, and they're not really that good for gaming. But you know, it's nice to have the extra buttons here for some of the other games, so I'm just going to use them anyway. I'm stabbing my fingers on the LED wires here. You see these buttons actually have not only a switch component, but an LED integrated into them. They are potted, so it'll be nice not to totally ruin these. They're probably quite a few quid each actually, so let's not damage them totally. So you can see here this stick has 2 buttons here, a menu button, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons technically. SNES controller has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So really we're going to need a bunch more of these. So either we're going to put 3 of these here, or what we could do is try to, I don't know, put some more, like make 2 diamonds. Let's worry about that when we come to it. I've come to a decision here. What I'm going to do is actually mount 2 of these on the corners, like shoulder pads, because I think that would be kind of cute, you know, when I'm playing a game. Maybe I can do something like that going on. And here I'm going to put these 2 just there. I ought to really be marking off these where I'm going to put these holes, but I think I'm just going to wing it. We're going to even use that. I'm not even going to use a proper drill bit, I'm just going to use a step bit. Always fun, always risky. So, if we're going to pop, you can see like how little care I take. You can take a lot more care than me. Now I hope inside this case there's not something obstructing where I want to go. Just looking at these bits, it's a step bit, so you've got to work out whereabouts you want it to go. I think let's worry once it gets to about here. Right. The moment of truth. Yay! Nice one. Okay, one there. This is a bit trickier. Look at that. And they're actually pretty well spaced. This one's slightly a little bit in, slightly a little bit low, but I'm not going for perfection here. You can see I've got, I'm literally making this in real time. I'm trying not to use any camera trickery. And you might think, oh wow, he's not using any camera trickery. The reason I don't want to use any camera trickery is because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to cut and edit and mess around with actually making a video. I just want to spend time playing the games. So we'll discombobulate this, and I might have to resort to a little tiny bit of camera trickery because you might get really bored of watching me unscrew everything. And then I'm going to have to go rooting around and find some wire to wire this all up internally. So you can see here by my thumb there's a battery door. And where there's a battery door, that means there's always a battery compartment, which means, unfortunately for our purposes, there's usually a bunch of rubbish in there that we would like to avoid, because there's always those little plastic battery holders and all that nonsense in there. Just noticed on the side as well here, there's actually an on-off switch, which I might just get rid of at the same time. I don't think we're going to need that. It'd be nice to sort of retask some of these things, but I can't think of a purpose for an on-off switch in what we're doing today. There is our joystick. Look at all the stuff that we could have hit when we were making that. Look at these posts, so close. Right, that's going to be tricky getting the nut on that thing. So I've just tipped out all the screws. You might have just about heard that off camera there. Pop those here for later. So you see what I mean about the battery door? This whole thing might be in the way. Let's first things first, so let's try to pop some switches in. They do have these glands, because I think these are actually waterproof switches, hence their expense. In fact, I think we might have to do a bit of butchery, because you can see all these parts here that we've come up quite close to, and just goes to show it really how quite accurate we were. That clearly we've come to these same features either side. We're going to have to probably cut all these out and rip them out, because you've got to put this nut on the end of these to keep them in place, and they're not going to go and stay in there unless, of course, I can glue them. So let me just offer one in. Let's see what we can do with that. Yeah, it's not particularly happy with it, and it's getting hit by that. So really, I am going to go do a jump cut right now and pull all those back, and we'll just, continue after that point. And I'm back. So I've drilled out the holes, and you can see I've actually fitted a button here just to start the process. And they're an absolute pain, these ones in the top, because they're right next to this post feature. But, let's crack on. How I've discovered a technique here is to put the nut and the serrated washer in beforehand. There we go. The nut and the serrated washer beforehand, so then I can post this through and then actually sort of twist the switch itself. It's a bit of fiddly, but it works. Now, just to let you know, there was all these internal features, and I told you I was going to remove them. I didn't really bother using a Dremel or anything like that. A trusty pliers was all you needed. Just make sure it's a nice sharp-edged one like that. And it just munched through all those bits and bobs. In fact, I could have done a better job of this piece, because this one doesn't want to... Ow! He said poking that through into his finger. That one didn't want to go through. Why don't I just show you an easier one for now? Okay, so I've got the hole at the front. I've got the switch plus its little rubber washer there going on. Just poking that through, putting the serrated washer on, and putting the nut. It's as easy as that. You can repeat this as many times as you like, because technically these Nintendo controller things, because they're all basically digital inputs, you have a whole load, because let's see, you've got 4, 5, 6, 8 buttons plus 4 of the D-pad. That's 12 buttons. If you wanted to, just for like a laugh, you could make your own flight simulator USB interface by just hooking up 12 of these buttons in a row. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you could make your own sort of MechWarrior 4 controller or something, and each button could be sort of configured to do something. So I play Elite Dangerous occasionally, and that has a obviously requirement for a bunch of buttons, and you can assign all the buttons to whatever you like. So yeah, you could just technically just make your own little pad. Cracking on, we'll get this other nut on. And if you want to just make sure, nip it up hand tight, and you can sort of twist it from both sides. It's a little bit uneven because we've mashed some plastic off. So just to make sure it's really in tight, just get your end of your pliers and just twist that nut round a bit. And, don't over crank it. There's no point. You'll end up splitting the switch in half. How much force are you really going to put on this? Not much. You're not going to try to be damaging your own equipment. I had to think about my selecting, using the menu to select start and select at the same time. Might have a little bit of an issue with that. I might need to start using some diodes and things. So that'll be fun to figure out. See, this one's got a lot longer to go because this is really not sitting flat. There we are. Serrated washer now is fully compressed, so it's not going nowhere. There you go. Bit weird playing with it with buttons either side. We're used to having them on one side or the other, aren't we? Doesn't matter though. Onwards. What I'll do is I'm going to just do another jump cut now and just see if I can clean this out, and we'll come back as soon as I've done that. I managed to get the bit of stuff out of the way, so we're just cranking this on. And that should be all of our buttons virtually ready to go. Yeah, there we go. So we've got our shoulder buttons. all our other buttons. 1, 2, 3, 4, plenty of, count them all up. I've loosened the controller thing now. Got plenty of screws on these things, a whole bunch of them, but they're all off now. So there's the PCB that we're going to use, and there's your shoulder buttons. Just to pop that out, pop that out. There we go. We can keep the shell aside for later. Our joystick is ready. Our donor PCB looks like we can sort of fit it. In fact, look how the shoulder buttons almost already line up, although remember they're actually flipped the other way. Might make more sense to put this in this way really. We've got to consider this battery bulge here. If we don't want to really cut the battery out the way, you can see that the battery bulge doesn't really extend more, protrude more than this depth. So whatever we fit in has to fit within the depth of this case. And our PCB really isn't quite going to do that as it stands, so it does make sense that we chop it down a little bit. So we're going to have to trim something. You can see there's a couple of lines I've marked on the board, and that's where I think logically it makes the most sense on this PCB to cut it. And I'll show you the reason why. These three contacts all have a common ground at this point, the back end, and this point here, and it's the same with these, with the exception of this one signal trace for the left, which is this PCB track I've marked with an L. Similarly, the right hand side button, which corresponds with A on the controller, K2 here, is actually can be moved here. So we've got a bit of metal here that we can, bit of track that we can clean off. So what I'm going to do is use tin snips to cut down here and here. And then actually I'm going to just cut these off because we're going to desolder them from here anyway and solder new wires for the shoulder pads. So I'm going to be quite ginger with this because I don't really want to split the PCB too much. So I'm going to take as much as I can while still leaving enough metal here to tack to. So I've drawn a line, but the further in I can go on that line, the better. So I'm going to attempt to do it this way. Take your time, it'll snip nicely. We've got the left button, the top button, the bottom button, and just this little bit of track here will be our right button, which will be A, the red button. And just to show you how I intend to do this, if you get something like a screwdriver, just rub it. You can take the varnish off, the coating of the PCB, and we'll be able to solder onto that nicely. There we go. So looking at it, because we've got these two nice pads here, I can actually take it all the way virtually to these pads, just along this track. So there we go, beautiful. So just before I pop it into the case to glue, I just thought I'd show you what I've done. Just to make it easier, I've actually pre-tinned the pads. So you can see here, this is the up, right, down and left pads. And then here on the right hand side, we've got the X, Y, B and A buttons. I've also removed the shoulder pads and then tinned these two blobs here. And because we've lost the ground contact on all these switches, I've made a new ground rail here. So I've scratched a bit of the varnish off at regular spacing, so we have extra ground points. We might not use all of them. And then what I might check here, for ease of use for the shoulder pads, we might just, rather than figure out which is ground, we'll just put 2 wires on each of these. And the reason we don't need 2 wires for all the switches, I'm going to show you that now again, because it's a little bit clearer. So you can see the actual micro switch unit here for the joystick. And you'll notice there's a lot of black wires on this PCB, and it's because half the switches, one side of each switch is basically connected to ground. And that applies to actually the whole micro switches and everything. So that's really good. That means basically we only have to hook this one black wire to our ground points that we've made here, just one of these here, and then all of these existing switches are grounded. So we're going to do the same in effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a black wire from here across to here, and we can actually solder it to this tag if we want to, or we can solder it onto our PCB that we're putting in. And we can do the same on these shoulder buttons. Or, as I sort of indicated earlier, we could keep 2 individual ones. For now, I think I'm going to leave this button on the side. I don't really think it's going to offer us anything right now. So I'm just going to pop the lid back on this one. We'll pretend it's not there for now. So onwards with the gluing. I'll glue the PCB in and then we'll finish soldering up. I might solder some of these wires on as well while I'm at it. So I'm going to mix up some glue actually and just pop this right in now. Once that's glue set, we're going to start attaching the wires. You can see I've soldered some wires on. What I've done is I've replaced the rather rubbishy looking wires that were on the joystick area and replaced them with some new ones. I'm just hooking up our extra buttons that we have inboard onto the earth rails while we're here. I'm not really taking much care with my soldering. You can see I'm using quite a crude gas soldering iron, the type that you might have at home. So if I can do it with this, you'll have no problem with whatever you've got. So these were the earth rails. I say earth rails, ground rails. We're not talking power mains powered things here, power electrics. So this is the one that's coming from the joystick unit and all of the buttons, and these are the additional buttons that we've added, and rather than try to hook them up to here, I've just put them straight onto the PCB. So you'll see this one's hooked there and that one's hooked there. But don't worry, at the end I'll go through everything. Something else I've noticed, these 2 wires here which go from the existing buttons won't really reach over to where we need them to be, and it would be quite cute to keep them all sort of the X, Y, A, B. So maybe the left hand side will be YX and then the right hand side will be BA, something like that. We know we can reconfigure it in the software, so it's not really that big a deal, but it would be nice to get them, you know, some sort of pattern to them. So I'm going to solder the left hand side ones as Y and X. So the leftmost one should be Y, so that'll be here. And X is the one immediately above it. So it will go here. So we know we're never going to be able to reach these 2 wires over there. So while I'm here, I've got some yellow. I'm just going to put a piece of yellow wire onto A. These are all pre-tinned, by the way. I took a bit of time earlier. The green wire onto B. Technically for the UK unit, the B button's yellow, so we could have tried to even keep the colours if we were that bothered, but we're not. So what I'm going to do is just bring those over and heat shrink bond those to there. That's something that we can do in a while, because I want to just have a look here to see. We've got the start and select buttons, these two new buttons we've decided are going to be start and select. So we've got a couple of choices on colour. I've got a bit of red here left. We can pop that on for the start. And then I'm going to need some wire for the select, and I've got loads of this blue, so I'm going to just cut this blue wire off. I'm going to tin the end of it. I always like to keep them a bit shorter. There we go. And we'll just solder that onto the select. Select is traditionally the left button here, so the blue will go onto this point here, and this red wire will go onto the opposite side. So we can do that right now. I'm not even using side cutters, I'm just showing you. I've got actual real tools, genuine tools for doing this sort of job and doing it properly. However, I'm just going to use the sort of tools that everybody's got access to, and you can just go into the garage and grab a pair of pliers like this. Just take care with it. Once you get proficient in stripping with pliers, you end up just using them for everything. And just make sure you've got your wire there. Just touch it with some solder on the very tip, so it's got a nice little blob of solder on it like that. In fact, let me zoom in, let me show you what that ends up looking like. You can see it right there, a nice little blob of solder on the end, and this is where we're going with it. So that way it's pre-tinned. As soon as you just touch the two together, it's soldered. Just wait there 2 seconds, let it cool down, and you're ready to go. So we'll just do that now with the other one. I've got my really crap tweezers, but that's good enough. Help me position this one in here. So start and select are done. So I've raced away a little bit and I've connected up all of the joystick things. We'll go through the joystick configuration at the moment. I've just got now the shoulder buttons left to do, so I'm going to just take the opportunity just to very quickly solder those in. I did extend the two buttons from this side, and you can see that little bit of yellow just in here. That's some very fine gauge heat shrink. Finishes it off nicely. You know, really, that nobody's going to see your work, so you could just use tape. Functionally, it's going to be strong enough. There's not going to be too many forces exposed to this unit. Or should that be, this unit will not be exposed to too many forces. You can correct my grammar in the comments below. Right, so that's the 4 wires on the shoulders ready to go, so we're just going to hook those up. You can see I've pre-tinned these so I don't have to apply solder. That's handy because I only have 2 hands. That's those 2, just the last 2 to go now. It's a little bit more awkward with this kind of rubbishy tweezers, but we'll get there. We'll get there indeed. If I'm not mistaken, that should be our last wire. The green. Let's just do it this way around. There we go. So let's check what we've done before we go any further. Right. So we've got the white wire, which to me should be activating when we push up, and that's going to the up here on the PCB. Well, that's good. We've got the blue wire that should be going to down, and indeed it's going to down here. You can see the blue wire there. When we push left on the controller, it's actuating the purple. And you can just see it underneath there. It is going to the left. That's the PCB, that track that we had to scratch. And then that relieves the right, which is the grey, which is this one. Yep, that's perfect. So button-wise, starting this side. In fact, let's start from this side because we know what we were going. Y, X, B, A ideally. So this should be going to Y. It's a blue wire going to indeed Y, and X, the other blue wire, is going to X under here. Y, X, this one should be B and this one should be A. So B is going to the green wire. Got a green wire here, and that's going to B indeed. And the final one should be A, which is going to a yellow, no, yes indeed, it's going to a yellow wire, and it's going to A, and A is the PCB that we cut. So then we have start and select that are going to the appropriate buttons that we've put on there, and then we've connected the shoulder buttons. Looks like we're ready to pop the lid on and we'll hook it up to the PC. It's the moment of truth. So the screws are all in now. It's all self-contained. Look, you've got your 2 buttons at the top here. All the other buttons are connected. USB wire. I put a little bit of strain relief in there, but I might inject some hot glue gun glue, you know, the black glue gun glue in there to sort of fill that up. And what's quite nice, the battery door, pop that open and put something heavy in there if you want it really heavy and weighty. So we're going to plug that straight into the PC. Let's hopefully hear the sound of Windows going. Means it's happy. That's a good sound. Right, so let's try a game. I'm going to just very quickly load up a very old, some sort of classic game. How about 1941? There we go. It's quite an old school game, but it should work. Let me zoom in a little bit. Well, actually, before I zoom in, let's actually show you using the joystick so you can see that it is actually really hooked up. Map game inputs. So player 1 coin, I'm going to set to that one. Yep, joystick 1 button 8. Start, joystick 1 button 9. Up, down, left, right, oops, shoot, and special. Right, so if we push this button we should add some coins. You can hear it's doing that. This button will start, there we go. It's a mission choosing. Doing the trick, so that's the regular shoot. Special. No pause because it's. It's going crazy! There we go. Yeah, so it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, all the buttons work, they all map. I think if you've got one of these TV games, please get it. Get one of those Super Nintendo control pads or one of the more custom PCBs you can use for that purpose. Hook it up, have a go. I mean, that only took, what did it take? Just over an hour or so? Absolutely fantastic fun, and I'm gonna have this for a long time. Save me throwing out this unit because it's broken anyway. Have a look at the car boot sale Sunday tomorrow. Off you go. Please feel free to comment down below, ask me any questions about this or how you can do this yourself, and feel free to subscribe. As ever, thank you for watching.